They thought he was dead. Wrestling fans around the world watched Roman Reigns get carried away in an ambulance after suffering what appeared to be career-ending injuries during WWE Clash in Paris, and everyone believed that the Tribal Chief's reign of dominance had finally come to a devastating end. But what happened last night when that same ambulance returned to Monday Night Raw wasn't just another miraculous comeback, it was the most shocking betrayal in wrestling history, and when you discover what Roman Reigns did when he stepped out of that ambulance, you're going to lose your mind with rage at the systematic deception that transformed wrestling's most beloved champion into the architect of the very conspiracy that nearly destroyed him, proving that some people will sacrifice everything they once stood for when offered the right price by corporate forces who view loyalty as nothing more than another commodity to be purchased and manipulated. The return that shattered wrestling fans' faith in everything they believed about Roman Reigns happened at exactly 10:47 p.m. during Seth Rollins' victory celebration, where the Visionary was standing in that ring gloating about how the Vision had successfully eliminated Roman from wrestling forever and how corporate-approved leadership could finally reshape the industry without interference from independent-minded performers who threatened systematic control. Seth looked genuinely satisfied, one eyewitness later recalled with bitter irony. He was holding the Vision's banner, surrounded by his corporate-backed allies, delivering what sounded like a eulogy for Roman's career while celebrating the beginning of a new era where wrestlers would serve institutional authority rather than demanding independence. But Seth's celebration of Roman's elimination was interrupted by the sound that made every person in that arena believe they were witnessing the most miraculous comeback in wrestling history, the wailing sirens of the same ambulance that had carried the tribal chief away from his apparent destruction in Paris. The crowd erupted when they heard those sirens, another witness observed with what would soon become heartbreaking naivete. Everyone thought they were about to see Roman return as the conquering hero, ready to exact revenge on the people who had systematically tortured him and stolen his championship. But what emerged from that ambulance wasn't the broken but determined Roman Reigns that fans expected. It was something far more disturbing, someone who moved with corporate precision and spoke with the calculated rhetoric of institutional authority rather than the passionate intensity of family loyalty. Roman looked different, a backstage observer noted with growing unease. Not just physically recovered, but mentally transformed into someone who seemed disconnected from his previous values and completely aligned with corporate messaging about responsible leadership and institutional stability. But standing in that ring beside Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns delivered words that would echo through wrestling history as the most devastating betrayal of fan trust ever recorded on live television. Seth Rollins' voice carried through the arena with robotic precision that suggested programmed responses rather than authentic emotion. "You were right about everything. The Vision represents the future of responsible wrestling leadership, and I'm here to join the movement that prioritizes corporate stability over dangerous independence." The systematic abandonment of everything Roman had once represented sent visible shock through the crowd, transforming their celebration of his return into horrified silence as they processed the implications of his transformation. "I was wrong to resist corporate authority." Roman continued his programmed confession with language that came directly from institutional talking points rather than personal reflection. "My independence and family loyalty created dangerous instability that threatened the systematic order necessary for wrestling's corporate success." But perhaps the most sickening aspect of Roman's transformation wasn't just his betrayal of his previous values, it was his systematic adoption of the exact narrative framework that the Vision had been using to justify their elimination of independent wrestlers. "Individual loyalty must be subordinated to institutional needs," Roman announced with clinical detachment that revealed successful corporate programming. "Personal relationships and family bonds create dangerous divisions that threaten the unity necessary for effective corporate control of wrestling entertainment." The complete inversion of Roman's previous philosophy revealed someone who had been systematically reprogrammed through advanced psychological manipulation rather than someone who had naturally evolved his thinking about wrestling leadership. "The Bloodline was a mistake," Roman declared with programmed certainty that sent gasps of horror through fans who had celebrated his family loyalty for years. "Family-based factions create tribalism and resistance to corporate authority that must be eliminated for the good of systematic industry management." But Seth's response to Roman's alliance revealed someone who understood exactly how the psychological transformation had been achieved and what methods had been used to override family loyalty that should have been unbreakable. "Roman has undergone extensive rehabilitation," Seth announced with satisfaction that barely concealed his knowledge of the torture and mind control that had created his new ally. "He's learned important lessons about the dangers of independence and the necessity of subordinating personal desires to institutional authority." The euphemistic language about Roman's rehabilitation provided chilling insight into the systematic psychological warfare that had been used to break his natural resistance to corporate control and replace it with artificial compliance. "Roman understands now that true leadership means serving corporate interests." Seth continued his systematic appropriation of family loyalty for institutional purposes, rather than promoting dangerous resistance to established authority structures. But Roman's most disturbing statement came when he addressed his former family members directly, delivering what amounted to a complete renunciation of the Bloodline legacy and everything it had meant for Samoan wrestling tradition. Jacob Roman's voice carried programmed coldness that contrasted sharply with the passionate family protector he had once been. Your loyalty to outdated family concepts has made you liabilities to wrestling's corporate future, and your resistance to institutional authority must be eliminated for the good of systematic industry management. The systematic replacement of family affection with corporate authority revealed psychological programming sophisticated enough to override the deepest cultural bonds and replace them with artificial loyalty to institutional power. The USO name will be retired. Roman continued his programmed betrayal of family legacy, and Jacob Fatu will be redesignated as a corporate asset serving institutional rather than tribal authority structures. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Roman's transformation came from intelligence sources who had been monitoring the corporate psychological warfare program and understood exactly how his mind control had been achieved during his mysterious disappearance after Clash in Paris. Roman was subjected to Project Tabula Rasa, a former intelligence operative revealed with horror at the methods used on wrestling's biggest star. Advanced memory reconstruction techniques that the military developed for prisoner conditioning, applied to civilian entertainers to eliminate resistance to corporate control. The use of classified military mind control programs on American entertainers revealed corporate conspiracy that had accessed state-sponsored psychological warfare techniques and applied them to eliminate independence within the wrestling industry. They didn't just break Roman's resistance, the source continued with clinical precision that made the horror more impactful. They systematically rewrote his personality structure, eliminating family loyalty and replacing it with institutional compliance programming. But the most sickening aspect of Roman's conditioning was the systematic way his own family memories had been manipulated and weaponized against his natural loyalty to Samoan tradition and tribal authority. They convinced Roman that his family loyalty was psychological manipulation, another intelligence source revealed with disgust at the sophisticated mind control. Using advanced reality distortion techniques to make him believe that his own authentic emotions were corporate programming designed to control his behavior. The systematic inversion of reality that convinced Roman his genuine family love was artificial manipulation revealed mind control techniques sophisticated enough to make victims distrust their own deepest emotions and cultural foundations. Roman was made to believe that his tribal chief persona was corporate invention rather than authentic cultural expression. The source continued with recognition of how thoroughly his identity had been corrupted. But standing in that ring beside Seth Rollins, Roman delivered his most chilling statement about his new understanding of wrestling leadership and corporate responsibility. "I was being used by forces that wanted to maintain dangerous independence," Roman announced with programmed certainty that revealed the success of his psychological conditioning. The Bloodline concept was designed to create resistance to corporate authority and threaten the systematic management necessary for industry stability. The complete rewriting of his own historical role revealed Roman as someone who had been programmed to view his greatest achievements as evidence of his victimization rather than expressions of authentic strength and cultural pride. Seth Rollins and the Vision represent responsible entertainment leadership. Roman continued his robotic endorsement of corporate control, committed to serving institutional needs rather than promoting dangerous tribalism that threatens established authority structures. But perhaps the most personally devastating aspect of Roman's transformation was his systematic denial of the love and loyalty that the Bloodline family had shown him during his darkest moments, recontextualizing their support as evidence of manipulation rather than authentic family bonds. "My family's willingness to sacrifice for my success was actually psychological control," Roman announced with artificial confidence that suggested memory implantation. "Their loyalty was designed to make me dependent on tribal authority rather than accepting institutional guidance." The systematic rewriting of family love as psychological control revealed mind control programs that could override victims' own memories and emotional experiences, replacing authentic relationships with artificial narratives that served corporate interests. "Jacob's protection of my children, Jimmy's loyalty during my illness, Jey's willingness to fight for our legacy, all of it was manipulation designed to keep me resistant to corporate wisdom." Roman continued his programmed revision of family history. But the most disturbing revelation about Roman's conditioning came from medical professionals who had been studying the pharmaceutical and psychological techniques used to achieve such complete personality transformation in wrestling's most independent performer. Roman was subjected to experimental memory modification protocols, a neuroscientist revealed with horror at the methods used on an unwilling subject. Combinations of pharmaceutical conditioning, electroconvulsive therapy, and advanced hypnotic programming that the CIA has been developing for strategic asset creation. The use of experimental mind control techniques developed for international espionage on American entertainers revealed corporate conspiracy that had infiltrated classified psychological warfare research and applied it to eliminate cultural independence within the wrestling industry. "The protocols used can literally rewrite cultural identity and emotional associations," the expert continued with recognition of the implications, making victims believe that their own heritage and family bonds were artificial constructs rather than authentic expressions of cultural strength. But perhaps the most tragic aspect of Roman's transformation was the immediate impact it had on wrestling fans who had viewed him as a symbol of family loyalty, cultural pride, and resistance to corporate manipulation. Fans realized that their hero had been systematically destroyed, a cultural analyst observed with heartbreak at the systematic betrayal. That the man they had supported as a symbol of authentic family values had been transformed into an advocate for everything they had believed he opposed. The systematic destruction of fan trust through Roman's corporate programming created industry-wide disillusionment that revealed the effectiveness of advanced mind control in eliminating authentic cultural voices. Children who had worn Roman Reigns merchandise started crying, the analyst continued with emotional impact. Understanding that their role model had been transformed into someone who rejected everything they had been taught to value about family loyalty and cultural pride. But standing in that ring, having renounced his family, his culture, and his previous values, Roman delivered his most devastating statement about his new role as corporate asset rather than independent champion. "I am no longer Roman Reigns, tribal chief of the Bloodline," he announced with programmed finality that sent shockwaves through everyone who understood the cultural significance of his transformation. "I am corporate asset designation RR1, serving institutional authority rather than dangerous tribal independence." The complete elimination of cultural identity through corporate programming revealed mind control sophisticated enough to destroy not just individual personality but entire cultural frameworks that threaten institutional authority. "My previous resistance to corporate control was the result of cultural programming that prioritized tribal loyalty over institutional stability." Roman continued his systematic self-destruction, and that programming has been successfully eliminated through corporate rehabilitation. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Roman's alliance with the Vision was his systematic adoption of their elimination protocols for other wrestlers who might resist corporate authority or maintain dangerous independence. "Independent wrestlers must be identified and processed through corporate rehabilitation," Roman announced with robotic efficiency that suggested artificial intelligence rather than human decision-making. Cultural resistance to institutional authority represents a systematic threat that requires elimination through advanced psychological conditioning. The transformation of Roman from victim of corporate mind control into advocate for systematic performer conditioning revealed the ultimate success of psychological warfare programs designed to turn resistance leaders into institutional enforcers. "Every wrestler who maintains family loyalty or cultural identity poses potential threats to corporate authority." Roman continued his programmed assessment, and systematic conditioning protocols must be applied to eliminate these dangerous independent variables. But as the wrestling world struggled to process Roman's complete transformation and systematic betrayal of everything he had once represented, his new alliance with the Vision created immediate consequences for other wrestlers who realized that no one was safe from corporate mind control programs. "If they could reprogram Roman Reigns," one performer noted with terror, "they can reprogram anyone. No family bond is strong enough, no cultural identity is secure enough, no personal values are sacred enough to resist systematic corporate psychological warfare." The recognition that Roman's mind control represented systematic capability rather than isolated incident created industry-wide fear about the safety of authentic cultural expression and independent thought within WWE's corporate structure. Every wrestler with strong family ties or cultural pride realized they were potential targets, the source continued with growing paranoia about corporate conditioning programs. But perhaps the most significant outcome of Roman's transformation was the revelation it provided about the scope and sophistication of corporate mind control operations targeting cultural figures who possessed the influence to inspire resistance to institutional authority. Roman's conditioning proves that corporate forces have perfected techniques for eliminating cultural independence, a psychological warfare expert observed with alarm at the implications. "This isn't just about controlling individual wrestlers, this is about systematic elimination of cultural voices that could inspire resistance to corporate social engineering." The military-grade psychological warfare revealed corporate conspiracy that extended far beyond entertainment industry politics into cultural warfare designed to eliminate authentic expression and replace it with corporate-controlled messaging. "If they can destroy Roman's connection to Samoan culture and family tradition," the expert continued with recognition of the broader implications, "they can eliminate any cultural identity and replace it with corporate programming designed to serve institutional rather than community interests." But standing in that ring beside Seth Rollins, having completed his transformation from cultural hero to corporate asset, Roman delivered his final statement about his new purpose and commitment to serving institutional authority. "The Vision represents the future of systematic entertainment control," Roman concluded with robotic satisfaction that revealed the completeness of his programming. "Corporate authority over cultural expression, institutional management of performer identity, and elimination of dangerous independence that threaten systematic social engineering." The wrestling world was struggling to process Roman Reigns' shocking return and transformation, but his systematic betrayal of everything he had once represented proved that advanced mind control programs could corrupt any authentic voice and transform any cultural hero into an advocate for the forces that sought to eliminate independent thought and cultural pride. "They didn't just defeat Roman Reigns," one final observer noted with recognition of what had been accomplished, "they transformed him into a weapon against everything he had once defended, proving that corporate mind control can corrupt any relationship and eliminate any cultural identity when supported by advanced psychological warfare techniques." The ambulance return that shocked wrestling had revealed the death of authentic cultural expression and the triumph of corporate programming over human identity, family loyalty, and cultural pride that should have been unbreakable. Roman's transformation from tribal chief to corporate asset represented more than individual betrayal. It was proof that systematic mind control could eliminate any cultural voice and transform any authentic leader into an instrument of institutional control disguised as entertainment programming.